It is a Thursday evening at 9 p.m. and that can mean only one thing. Arsenal are in the semi-final of the Champions League. Had to get that in there. And yes, Standards FC, I am taking that to the bank. I don't care about trophies. You heard it here first. No. Obviously, I'm on cloud nine. Nathan is as well. And Ed will be once the Colts draft a tight end in the first round. But you're here today with a Southbound group. We are Colts fans, but we are taking on the AFC South because we're doing something that the Colts can't do, and that's we're going to win the AFC South debate. And yeah, so to get into it, good evening, gentlemen. We are a week out from the draft. Chris Ballard's going to work his magic, of course, but there are, if I can get that out, 3 other teams in our division, unfortunately, which means we don't win. We love to lose in Jacksonville in the last game, and we love to lose to the Texans in the first game. Heritage, as Jose Mourinho said. So shall we start? Because we can blitz for our own team. So we'll save them till last. We'll save the Colts till last. So shall we start? Oh, where shall we start? Should we start with the Titans? Because they've got the number 1 pick, yeah?
Yep. That's right.
So I will say my power rankings for the AFC South going into this year, pre this conversation, this could change after an hour. But I think the Texans are still probably 1, just. I think we're 2nd, and then the Jags are 3rd, and the Titans are 4th. So who wants to go first with who the Titans are taking and what, how is that going to move them up the power rankings?
Take it away, Ed.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think, so I think Tennessee, I think they've obviously got the number 1 pick in the draft. They've got number 1 pick for a reason. They fell apart last year. I think who they're taking at number 1 is not so much even up for debate anymore. I don't know if either of you guys saw the video that Cam Ward did on his, I think he was like Fortnite or one of his online gaming, when they were asking him who's the best wide receiver in the NFL, who's the best running backs in there, who's the best coach in the NFL. It was all, it's a lock, isn't it? He's going number 1. Tennessee are taking him. So had a little look at their figures in a bit more detail today, Tennessee Titans. And I was surprised by a few of the things that I saw. If you would just bear with me whilst I can just stat out a little bit and geek out a little bit, gentlemen.
Go for it, man.
So, if I was to tell you that on defence, total yards against per game, where would you have ranked the Tennessee Titans last year?
Next to us.
Which would be...
I think the bottom end, I'm going to go mid-20s, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So yards against per game, they actually finished 2nd behind the Philadelphia Eagles.
Wow.
So I nearly fell off my
sneaky start.
Yeah, so when you're looking at it, you're thinking, "What? That can't be right." So I thought, am I looking at this upside down? Am I looking at this the wrong way round? But no, they finished 2nd in yards against, but points against, they finished 30th. So clearly, there's an issue that teams aren't able to get many yards, but towards the red zone, they just can't stop teams from scoring. That seems to be an issue. So the reason I'm mentioning that, and not offence, because we know, number 1, they're going to take Cam Ward. They need a new quarterback. They also finished dead last in turnover differentials, in unsurprising news. Looking at the stats, Will Levis, 12 interceptions. Pardon?
Carson Wentz 2.0.
That's a bit harsh on
Carson.
Wentz. Yeah. And then Mason Rudolph came in and threw for a further 9 interceptions. And between them, they also had 7 fumbles for loss. So looking after the ball was clearly a problem. And I think that's also reflected in the fact that, they were 29th for sacks allowed as well. So clearly there's a problem offensive line and quarterback. So I think it's obvious that they're going to take quarterback at number 1. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at where they were picking next, because I didn't really, other than that, obviously I know they're picking first overall, but I didn't actually have much of a clue where else they were picking in the draft. So they've got pick at 35. They've got no round 3 pick, and they've got 2 in round 4, and then a few sort of later on. So I thought it'd be interesting. Obviously, like I say it for the 4th time. They're taking Cam Ward number 1, so they're going to have a new quarterback. But I'm more interested to see what they're going to do with that 35, with that pick at number 35. So start the 2nd round. Edge rush, maybe, coming up, if points against per game, total yards against per game was all right. Passing yards against per game, they were also 2nd. But rushing yards, they were 26th. So I would say maybe something along the D line. That might be an option. That's clearly where the problems are for them. And then I think maybe with their later round picks, they're going to have to try and help Cam Ward with some sort of weapon with their 4th round picks. They've lost. Is it Nick Westbrook-Akine?
Yeah.
The wide receiver who every time I saw Red Zone last year seemed to be scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, very true. All fantasy players will know that.
So again, so when I looked at it in more detail again, because I'm only going off I follow the Colts closely. Other teams I have a passing interest in, but when you sort of actually look at the stats, so Nick Westbrook-Akine, he had 497 yards, but 9 touchdowns. So clearly very effective, but they've lost him because he's now gone to the Miami Dolphins. So they're going to have to replace that production from somewhere else. So I don't know if maybe they might look at that with their 2nd round pick, or they might look at doing that later on. But I think Cam Ward number 1 is a lock, and then they're going to have to focus on something on their D line, and then try and get Cam Ward somebody to throw the damn ball to, because other than Calvin Ridley, I don't really see a huge amount else there for him. That's my cut.
I want to throw a couple of questions to Ed, and then I'll let you jump in, Nathan, with what you think. And I think this has been a big chat between our group, right? And I think it's a big topic we're going to try and lead at some point, which is, are these players NFL ready? And I think they are making the mistake. It's not a mistake, right? Because obviously anyone who gets the NFL's worked extremely fucking hard to get there.
Agreed.
And it's relatively speaking, right? My fucking, never mind my 40 time, my 30 time is probably about 16 seconds. So this is no slight on these guys, right? But are they making the same mistake we did with Richardson and thinking the guy who is faster and stronger and more athletic than the people around him at a college level can translate that to the NFL?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that, to be honest with you. I think it's a really interesting point. I don't know is the honest answer, because I think obviously Richardson came out, he was very, very green. I think Cam Ward has a bit more experience.
22?
He's same age. I think he is like a day younger than Richardson, but obviously Richardson's been in the league now for 2 years. So Cam Ward has had those extra years in college. I think it's not so much the player coming out, but also the environment that he's going into. Tennessee are a long way away from competing again. If he goes in there next year, I think it's going to be. He's not going to come in and transform that franchise unless they spend big around him, in my opinion. And I think that might have an impact on him overall and how he's then perceived in the league. And I think this is the problem, to bring it back to the Colts. Obviously we are Colts fans, but I think this is the big problem Richardson's now facing, is that it's almost like everybody's opinion on him is set. He can't make it in the NFL, because of this situation that he was in last year. Partly his fault, but partly not his fault, partly, a product of his environment. And I think that that's probably the biggest issue facing Cam Ward, is he's going to come into, I think, a pretty poor setup. He's not coming out with the kind of pedigree of a Jaden Daniels or, a Caleb Williams from last year. And both of them, Caleb Williams struggled in Chicago, and we were all told he was the best, quarterback of all time. Go back a few more years, Trevor Lawrence, the greatest quarterback to ever play college football, and exactly that. But
Mm.
so the point I'm trying to make, sorry, is that it's not necessarily just on the player; it's the environment that they're going into. And I think Cam Ward is. I just don't think Tennessee is going to be. It's not going to enhance his reputation. Let's put it that way. I think that franchise is a couple of years away from competing again.
So last one then, like I said, and then I'll let Nathan jump in. Me personally, if I'm the Titans, I can't say I'm a big draft guy. I love watching it. I love the spectacle. I don't really know. I can't tell you how strong the class is. I'm not that deep into it. So tell me if I'm wrong. Does it not serve the Titans better to go and get a Sam Darnold from the Vikings, and go defense first round, or go offensive line, get the monster offensive, guard like we did for, I know it's for Andrew, but like we did with Nelson, we could have gone and got Zach Wilson. Thank God we didn't, but we could have gone down that route, and we didn't. I suppose what I'm trying to say and trying to ask is, are the Titans falling for the same trap that every franchise falls for every year at some point, that they just want the shiny new toy?
I think personally there's definitely an element of that. Yeah, I think quarterbacks we know will always have a premium.
Yeah, of course.
Because of the position that they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is Cam Ward the number one? Like you, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a draft expert and anything like that. But from everything you've seen and read, is Cam Ward the number one player coming into this year's draft? Probably not, but he will go number one because of the position that he plays.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I would potentially, if it was me, I'd probably look at a veteran quarterback and take the best player available, which would either be Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, and go from there. But I'm also running a campaign to keep both of those two out of the AFC South, because I don't want them coming out and playing against us. So I'm quite happy with them taking the approach they are. But for what it's worth, I agree with you. I think you should be looking at the best players available in the situation Tennessee are in, and maybe going and getting a veteran like a Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, safe pair of hands, literally, who can just come in and just kind of tidy it up while you sort of build around it, and then go get your quarterback in the future, maybe.
So I suppose I'll let you jump in there, Nathan, and sort of have your point on the same. But I suppose I'd like to play devil's advocate. The Colts have tried that, right? We've tried that for 8 years and it's not worked. So your opinions on that, mate?
Yeah, I think I'll start on one of the follow-up questions you asked. Are players league ready when they get drafted? And whilst Ed was really giving us a great answer there, I pulled up Cam Ward's stats, right, for his career, and even last year the guy threw 39 touchdowns, 4,313 yards, and had a completion percentage of 67.2. I think Ed is bang on the money. Cam Ward is not the best player in this draft. He's just lucky that he plays the position that kind of has, top of the draft, special treatment. I think the problem with drafts is there's always that player that you're referring to, mate. And it got Anthony drafted 4th overall. The what if, the traits, the mega pro day, the highlight reel almost. This year it's Jalen Milroe from Alabama. It's a week before the draft. All the media now is pushing him up the board, right? I was listening to a podcast earlier. Someone described him as, if Jalen Milroe is drafted as a starter, he would be a top 3 rushing quarterback in the league. Let's just reflect on that statement a moment, right? Top 3 rushing quarterback in the NFL when you've got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. They're trying to say that a guy who is comparable to Anthony in a sense of his throwing, his decision making is heavily critiqued, can go into a system and be a top 3 back. It's insane, you know. 2 months ago, people were talking about drafting Jalen Milroe to try convert him to a different position. And now we're a week before the draft. You know, even Daniel Jeremiah, you know, he's going top of the second. He's a lottery pick draft. I feel sorry for quarterbacks. I really do. You know, Jackson Dart is another one out of Ole Miss. A guy that's like really rocketing up draft boards and mock drafts in the last 2 weeks. He's been mocked to go into the Saints at 9th overall. I mean, let's pump the brakes here a little bit, right? Like 9th overall for a guy that you know is only kind of become. Yeah, exactly. Look, yeah, I hope that answers the question. And one thing I will say is I can't agree with Ed's point more. You know, the AFC South is literally getting 2 of the top 5 prospects in this draft, in, you know, 1st overall and 5th overall. And I'm glad Abdul Carter isn't coming to town, put it that way. I think Bernie Raymond would have his hands full twice a year, I'll tell you that.
Yes, so I mean, yeah, just to round out the Titans, Cam Ward, and this was my point with Trevor Lawrence, and I remember getting laughed out the room when I said it. I said he's not a number 1 overall pick, not a cat in hell's chance. He is talented enough. So when we're privileged, right? When we say number 1 overall picks, we say Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. They are number 1 overall picks. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's others in there, of course. Stafford, yes, and there's probably a few more who I can't name off the top of the head right now. But as a Colts fan, when you say to me a number 1 overall pick, I'm looking at Peyton Manning, and I'm looking at Andrew Luck. And when you're saying to me this guy is a number, I'm sat there going, he's not. And I think we've got all off season to bring up topics like this, so I don't want to go too deep, but I think maybe there's a whole episode there on the English press are amazing at this. We coined it better than anyone, at building up youngsters and absolutely stomping them to the curb when they don't score a penalty, when they go out drinking with their mates, or they buy the mum a house. You know, that's apparently the wrong thing to do, or they've gone shopping somewhere where it's not Waitrose, and it's like we tear these kids apart, right? So I won't get too deep into that because that's for another episode. But I think Ed, you summed it up perfectly, mate. He's going number 1 because he's a quarterback.
Can I come in there a second? Because I think I can really segue this into something interesting. So the point you make is fascinating, right? When you think of the 1st overall pick, and of course you went to Peyton and Andrew, but a player that came into my head was Myles Garrett, like unquestionable 1st overall pick, you know, first ballot Hall of Fame level player, right? And do you know what quarterback was drafted 1st in that draft? So Myles Garrett went 1st, and then who was drafted 2nd?
What year was that?
Can you remember? Yeah. So it was 2017. So we're going back a few years.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
It was Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh, God, yeah.
Now, I'm going to pose a theoretical question to you. Do you think if this draft, by the way, Patrick Mahomes was in this draft, if this draft was in 2025, do you think we'd be seeing Trubisky taken 1st and Garrett taken 2nd? Over to you. Do you think that's how the trajectory of the draft has changed?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the problem is it's all about what your agent can get people to believe now.
Yeah.
And like I say, boys, we could do. Yeah, very interesting point. I mean, we could do this for 40 minutes and really explore. we could really explore the consumerism of the draft and how it works. And that's actually like amazing. But you are right, and you speak to a point of. I mean, it never will be because it's Americans, and we know Americans are set in the way with stuff. But does it have to be reworked? Does it have to be changed up somehow? I don't know. But moving on then, because like I say, I could talk about shit like this for 3 hours. I really could. So let's move on to the number 5, the 5th pick overall in Jacksonville. I see them picking 5th, guys, and I see them still beating us next year. Yeah, I just that's all I can say. And God, we have a torrid time down there. But no, so I'll let Nathan take this one because Ed, you went first.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
So I think draft-wise, Jags are in a position where it has to be best player available. It's just like all teams, where's their board going? I think if I was a betting man, I'd go DT Mason Graham out of Michigan. Heavily mocked there as well, almost the automatic mock to the Jags. However, I can honestly see a world as well where Gene T might go there. When you're thinking of best player available, you kind of fall in love with talents like Gene T, but is it too high for a running back when you've got Travis Etienne on I think it's a £70 million deal. They've got a pretty good backup as well, whose name Tank Bigsby. Really good backup running back. Do you really bring Gene T into that room? I highly doubt it. Could Tyler Warren go there? Obviously, a new head coach now. Liam Cohen is, pretty renowned play caller. Is he going to want to see what he can do with Warren? But I think that the sensible side of me says it'll be Mason Graham, D tackle, who gets added to a really scary Jags D line. Especially the prospect of playing that twice a year as well. Obviously you've got star pass rusher Josh Allen on the D line, and then to keep it simple, you bring Mason Graham into that as well. This is a Michigan player. They're very, very well coached, well respected. It's a great addition for Jacksonville and a scary one for the South, really.
Ed?
Yep, agree with everything you've just said there, Nathan. Again, when I was looking at their stats today, I mean, they're pretty putrid actually when I was looking through their numbers. So total yards against per game 31st, passing yards against per game 32nd, rushing yards against per game 25th. So quite obvious. And also time of possession per game, they finished dead last in the league. So clearly their problem was getting their offense on the field. So their defense just couldn't get off. So I would say, yeah, Mason Graham, he's the player I've seen most commonly mocked to kind of come in and maybe sturdy that D-line up. Another name I would potentially throw out there is the corner from Michigan, Will Johnson.
Will Johnson, yeah.
With that, when I looked at the stats, with the passing yards against, total yards against, interceptions, they were 30th. Their secondary makes ours almost look sort of passable last year when I was looking at those numbers. And then the other one, like you mentioned there, Nathan, Ashton Genty. I mean, no, please don't bring him to the AFC South. Another one I'd like to keep well away from our division. And you're right, because I thought the same. I thought their rushing game was pretty good. But that might just be sort of biased from the fact that they ran all over us. I reckon most of those rushing yards were probably against the Colts because they actually finished 24th 26th, sorry, in rushing yards per game. So I do think that the vast majority of those must have come against us. And I think we're just better off starting 0-1 every year and just not bothering playing down there anymore. just call it off and we'll just have a weekend off and watch Red Zone instead of going down there and watching Trevor Lawrence just absolutely turn it on. That was the only other thing I potentially thought of when we looked at this, was because obviously Trevor Lawrence got really bad injury last year, as we know. Pretty cheap hit, I thought, to be fair. That was a nasty one. So I did wonder if maybe, what difference it would have with keeping him on the field. But I looked, they actually went 2-3 down the straight without Trevor Lawrence. And that last game against us, which was a dead rubber, and it was a game of bloody hell, can this game just be over? Do you remember the overtime just kept going on? And I think it was just a honking game of football that nobody wanted to win. So they potentially would have gone 2-2 without Trevor Lawrence. So I was thinking potentially somebody to keep him upright. But no, I agree with you, Nathan. Mason Graham, get their trenches sorted out. And yeah, just keep all the blue chip players like Ashton Genty as far away from the AFC South as possible. That's what I'd say.
Nobody wants good players in the AFC South apart from your own team.
Exactly that.
Like I say, this draft class, I've not seen a lot about. So the problem is when you are drafting best player available, you're often drafting somewhere you don't need to fill a need. And it's hard because I think the Colts are in a horrible position, right? Because we need Warren. Tyler Warren is the player we need. But he's going to be too far up the board in my eye. It's going to be too much to jump up and get him. So we're in the position where horrible position is the wrong word, but we're in a position you're a bit in no man's land. So is there a possibility if you're Jacksonville, you go, do you know what? D tackle Mason Graham sounds great. Like you say, could they trade back and and hope that their man's still there?
I don't think so. Personally, I mean, I'm just.
Want me to read out the draft order?
I'm just refreshing who's picking kind of after them.
Las Vegas in 6th, Jets 7th, Carolina 8th, Saints 9th, Chicago 10. That's your top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I will go with no. If I'm Jacksonville, I do not trade out of that spot. I mean, Vegas, we talked last week, are a team that require so many star injections across their roster. I'm looking at the Saints at 9. That's an old team, a team in cap hell. Do you let, your star DT pass you at 9? If you're the Saints, your draft room celebrating it if Graham makes it to 9. I don't think that would be the case. But what about you, Ed?
No, I agree. I did think, could they potentially draft back? But it would require somebody would have to really love a player to come up.
Mm-hmm.
To swap to and if the board goes the way that most people would think, you're probably saying that both Hunter and Carter will be gone by the time Jacksonville pick him. Genty's probably going to be the star that somebody's going to want to move up for, and how much people are willing to pay to move up for a running back when there are some other good options available later in the draft. So I don't know what sort of compensation they would even get for moving out of that position, to be honest with you. So whilst you say that we're in a bit of a bad situation, I think potentially they might, you know what I mean? Like they're in a situation where they're picking 5th. Do you think, I should be getting and I'm not saying Mason Graham isn't, but I'm just saying, it's not. They're not going to get a ransom for that pick, and they're getting, like you say, a defensive tackle who will come in and will make a difference. But it's never a sexy pick, is it? Let's be honest with you.
No, it's not. Okay, so I'll leave us to last, like I said, because we can end on the Colts. I've just got to say, lads, that at some point in the past month, there is probably two people who have been celebrating non-stop ever since the Texans traded away Trent Williams. Liatu Latu and Quitty Pay have got to be the two happiest pass rushers in the AFC South. The Texans, so they're picking, let's just have a look, where are they? They're 25th. Yikes. His name's escaped my mind, so forgive me, but the only possible is the Ohio State offensive tackle they pick up.
Josh Simmons.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I think that they're going to look O-line, aren't they? You'd have thought.
They have to. Surely the reason they've traded Williams as Trent away is because they've seen something. Surely that is the reason.
Yeah. I don't know is the honest answer. I think we were all surprised. And like you say, a little bit sort of, you know, the sicko and he's a little bit happy. So you want to see good players leave, let's be honest. And I saw a stat, funny enough, I was scrolling about an hour or so ago on my phone, and I think it said his pressure rate allowed last year was something like 3.2%, which, considering that CJ Stroud still got sacked about 4,000 times, it seemed, is pretty incredible. So why they let him walk? I mean, CJ Stroud must have cried his eyes out when he saw that happening. But one thing I would say, you know, as much as it pains to say, you would think they've probably got a plan in place. They probably are. They are going to draft O-line in the first round, you'd have thought. Yeah. I don't know where they pick after that, but I would have thought after that they then need to look at addressing some sort of weapons. I mean, it's got to be offense for the Texans, hasn't it? Their defense is pretty good, as we know. But yeah, I think it's got to be offensive line, and then the wide receiver, is it Tank Dell? That's his name, is it? The one who, I mean, the poor guy, his knees just obliterated. He's done. I mean, he's not playing this year, potentially, and it's really sad. He might not play again. You don't want to see that for anybody, irrespective of rivalries. But other than Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs has gone. You know, who's CJ Stroud throwing the ball to next year? So I think they're going to have to invest in some sort of weaponry for him as well. But yeah, first round pick. If they don't go O-line, I'll be staggered.
Nathan?
Yeah, I am of a slightly different opinion. I think the Texans will draft wide receiver. Ed kind of beat me to that. You know, you've got Nico Collins, who, in my opinion, is one of the best players in the AFC South, a top 10 league receiver too. You know, shout out to Nico, worked really hard and is now a, you know, highly paid wide receiver one. They've just got Christian Kirk from the Jags, and Tank Dell is, you know, as Ed rightly put it, probably one of the most unlucky players I think I've seen since Paris Campbell. You know, the guy just cannot get on the field and stay on the field. So, you know, I'm looking at names here. You know, Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State would be there at that point. Luther Burden III, who is a player that, like, draft analysts that I listen to just love. You know, I really can see them taking wide receiver and then maybe, you know, trying to get back in maybe to the top of the second to get the lineman they want, or just seeing who falls. You know, this is, you know, I'm certainly no expert, but experts call it a very deep O-line draft this year. So, you know, do you try bring a star in for CJ?
Yeah, I just think they've got to have a plan, and I think I don't know. It just seemed like a big move to get rid of your Quentin Nelson to when you've had a poor oil line really this year. Maybe that's the wrong word, depending on who you look at fault for sacks and stuff like that. But for keeping CJ upright, man, it just seems like a risky move. But we know from previous the Texans like to be aggressive in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Was it last year? What did they do? Did they do? I can't remember. They was like third and then went straight back in it. No, were they second and then went straight back?
It was the year before, yeah. They were second and then they went up for 3, yeah.
Yeah. You know, so, I mean, do we think we're going to see anything like that from them this year, or do we think they're just have they sort of used all the DRS and now they're recharging for the next lap?
I go on, you, Ed. You go first.
No, I was going to say I don't know, but I saw an interview earlier with their GM who said that they haven't really got a position in mind. They're just going to look at best player available.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if I don't know. I think they might be planning something. I don't know if that's the suspicious side of me. I just don't see how they can let their best offensive lineman leave without them having some sort of a plan. I think they're just too well organised at the moment, unfortunately. Go on,
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's all good. If I'm the Texans, I wouldn't be trading up. I mean, even just in this conversation, we've kind of identified they have a real need on the O-line. They have a real need at wide receiver. You'd want your first and second round picks to try and address that, even your third round pick to try and address it. I mean, who would be the trade partner too? Maybe Ballard picks the phone up at 14 and trades to a division rival. Who knows?
I think there'd be riots in Indianapolis, mate. There would be. Yeah. I think it'd be gone before fucking spring training.
I think that the final thing on the Texans, and just to kind of sort of piggyback your point there, Nathan, I also wonder if maybe they're looking at the rest of the AFC South and think, do we need to be that aggressive? Because actually we are the best team in the division. Do we need to be that aggressive and give away future capital for what benefit, really? Do you know what I mean? So that might play a part in it, but I do think they've got a plan. I do think that.
Yeah, I can see what you're thinking, and it makes sense. Me personally, I just think if you're the GM of a program, I think that's a very lazy way to think. I think, especially in our division, right? If I'm the Texans, I am going aggressive and going, how can we emphasize this gap between us and the Colts? Because, okay, we weren't great last year, and we was maybe 2 games away. I mean, there was get this right. There was an interesting stat about the Colts last year where it was like 9 games were 1-score games.
Mm.
So we was 9 plays away from being 15-2. We was also 9 plays away from being 2-15.
If they don't sit Anthony, we might sneak in. Sitting Anthony for Flacco was just a terrible move. Terrible move. And you think, imagine that we could literally have snuck in if they didn't sit. And I think the kid would have got us there.
Yeah. So, oh God, last season was horrendous. Anyway, on to the thing that matters about the AFC South. The Indianapolis Colts. I mean, as Colts fans, we've all mock drafted to death, right? We've done our mock drafts, we've done our situations. If you've not watched it, go and check out that episode from last week. We had a bit of fun, and Ed was the draft king, I think is the right thing to say. Would be monster draft with Philadelphia or whoever it was. But so I think it's fair to say there's 2 or 3 players, right, in Chris Ballard's mind or on the big board. There's 2 or 3 players, and that's maybe 4. That's Starks, Campbell, Warren, and Loveland. I would say. Add more if you think there's more, but what I think the question I'm trying to ask: what do we need to in this draft to make it better? To step forward, Ed.
I think we need at least, and I know this is like the holy grail of any draft, but I think we need to come away with a minimum of 3 starting players. I think that's a big ask going into a draft, because I think if you look, and I think I tried to make this point last week, and I'll kind of say it again. If you look at, for me, the biggest needs: tight end, we know, offensive line, yes, linebacker, possibly D-line as well. So if you said to me today, out of all of those, which ones would you be comfortable starting with? I would say the O-line I would be okay with as it is today. If you were to probably name your starters, if you had Gonzalez playing at right guard, Brain Smith coming back in, Tanner Bortolini will probably start at centre, you would have thought, next year. I'd be okay with that, but we still need depth, and I still want that to be looked at in the draft. But the tight end room has to be addressed. Yeah, honestly, I think we're so bored of saying it now as a fan base. It's just something that not only because I think it gives Richardson an extra, obviously an extra weapon, but I'd like to think that with a sort of not more competent tight end, that's really disrespectful, but with some more tight end productive play, you know, it will help with the run game as well, which I think is where Steichen wants to go. And then, on defense, you know, I think if I look at the depth chart, I haven't got it in front of me, Zaire Franklin, and then that's about it in the linebacker room at the moment, isn't it? You've got, I think Carly's will probably take a step forward, but that room needs help. What concerns me, because you mentioned Campbell there, and I've asked this question online a few times myself, because we talk about Campbell, but I've not seen much buzz around in the press. So I wonder if this is one of those sort of fan names that we've all kind of convinced ourselves, and we're all going to get disappointed when he's, you know, a Tampa Bay Buccaneer next year instead. I wonder if the injury that he had is potentially scaring off Ballard, because, like I said, I think he knows he needs players that can come in day one, get in that team and make a difference. And I don't know if Jahar Campbell's going to be fit and ready to go day one, which is also a concern with Loveland, I think, as well, the other tight end that you see linked to the Colts. So that does concern me a little bit. But yeah, for me, to answer your question, I've really gone around the houses there, is I think what we need in this draft are at least 3 players that are going to come in and start and make a difference from day one, minimum.
So, Nathan, Edge just killed all my dreams of getting a game changer in the first round in Jihan Campbell. So I'll just get back in my box. But
sorry, man.
No, it's before I ask the question, we obviously, you guys will know the famous saying, our American listeners might not, but never fall in love with a lone player, right? So you could transfer that to never fall in love with a draft player. Never fall in love with them, because you just don't know. So I'll phrase the question then to you, Nathan, of Warren's probably going to be too high. Loveland is a draft bust, according to Ed. You heard it here first. And Jihan Campbell's going to the Tampa Bay. He's called it all.
Yep.
So what do we do? Draft back to the second?
You segued in my point so well, and I think Colts fans are going to hate me for what I'm about to say, and you boys, you know, I cried myself to sleep last night, but I have really accepted that Warren's not going to be available at 14. I think if Gene T is drafted the Bears will take Tyler Warren. You know, Ben Johnson has shown what he can do with Sam Laporta at Detroit.
Mhm.
Warren is like a carbon copy physically of Sam Laporta, and someone who, you know, Johnson can get really, really predictable with. So I think I've kind of adjusted my draft crush because I don't think Warren is going to be there. And honestly, like, my draft crush now is Jihad Campbell. I really, really hope that he's the pick at 14. And I really, really, really hope we trade back in for Mason Graham at the top of the second. That would be just like the coolest draft when, you know, your GM's on the hot seat, your coach is on the hot seat. And then we're able to address two huge glaring needs with two players who are, in my opinion, ready to go day one. Ed raised a glorious point about the shoulder injury with Jihad. But I mean, you know, I always tend to go to, you know, the king of spring, Dan Jeremiah. He has Campbell as the 9th best player in this draft.
And we all know it, boys. Chris Ballard loves an injury. Loves an injury.
I mean, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm with you both. If Jihad Campbell is an Indianapolis Colt, I'll be delighted. I did a mock draft for another podcast, the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover podcast, and that was my selection for the Colts. Shout out to them, by the way, great guys. You know, Jihad Campbell, I'm with you, both of you. I think he would. I think he'd be an excellent addition. I'm just saying the injury just is the thing that I think may scare Ballard off. But then Lati broke his neck and had to retire from professional football. So, you know, as you say, injuries are not an off-putter. But yeah, I think there's a realistic possibility that Warren is gone. There's a realistic possibility that Campbell's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Worst case scenario, Loveland's gone.
Yeah. I really like where Nathan's going, and I'm going to send a rallying call if this ever gets to Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay. And I think we should live by the mantra. I think it's a good one. That offenses win games, but defenses win championships. And
totally.
If we come out of the first round with Jihad Campbell and Mason Graham, I would give Chris Ballard another contract, because that's just winning the draft, right? If you somehow can go and get Jihad Campbell, who you probably expected to get, so, you know, expected or is in the area, as to say, and then you go back in, trade above. If we're going off who we think is going where, trading above the Texans to go and get Mason Graham.
Do you mean Taylor, Harrison? Yeah, Mason Taylor, the tight end, or do you mean Graham, the D tackle?
Did you say Graham?
I'm referring to Mason Taylor. Just checking we're on the same page. Yeah.
I thought you said Mason Graham.
Sorry, no, I think he's long gone. Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. Yeah.
Well, we're going completely different routes then, but I'm going to be so ignore everything.
You're sending the farm, and I respect it. You're sending the farm.
Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, all right, I will do. Send the farm. You're going to be out of the job next year anyway. Sell the fucking farm. You're not going to live there. You've been evicted, so fuck it. Start meth underneath.
We'll all go to Pittman's farm. Pittman's got to sell his farm so we can draft somebody.
Yeah. So I'll shut up then. Yeah, what do I know?
No, I think you are right there, Harrison. To be fair, if you came out Jihad Campbell and Mason Taylor, we trade back in at the top of the second round because realistically, Warren's gone. Loveland won't stick around till the end of the first round. Somebody will pick him up. Denver, Chargers. There'll be a team in there that will take him, so he ain't going to be there. If you can come out there, you've got 2 starting players that are going to come in and change your team. Then if we can get some sort of O-line in with our third round pick, even if that means trading back up, then those sort of first 3 picks, I'd be more, if we can address those 3 needs of our first 3 picks, and that might require trading up with the third because we pick 14, 45, and then 80. I think to get somebody to come in and start, or to provide competition where they can start, we're probably going to have to trade up from that 80 spot. And then after that, I think we can then look at maybe a few more sort of project type players, maybe a bit more competition off the edge, a kicker. No, I'm joking. Maybe a quarter, maybe a sixth or seventh. I know we spoke about this last week. A quarterback potentially that it would be the most Colts thing ever if we draft, and end up with our own sort of Brock Purdy after the well publicised quarterback battle. They both lose, and our 7th round pick comes in and takes the job. So yeah, I think for me, if we can address those needs early, then the rest of it, I'm kind of more relaxed about. I don't know what you both think.
I just think I wouldn't draft a quarterback. My thoughts on quarterback, Nathan.
Yeah.
There's only one man for the job, Sammy Slinger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rip.
Bringing in these frauds, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, when you've got Sammy Slinger to run the offense. But I'm not a millionaire GM.
I think the only thing I'd add to that, Ed, is because next week literally is the draft, so Southbound will not be live at 9. We'll be, kind of live in some other way, definitely on our social media platforms. But I think a player that we should probably settle on the idea of as well is Nick Emanwari. I was looking at a stat where in the last 5 years, Ballard has drafted something like 16 or 17 players, which are like above 8.8 on the RAS. I'm no expert at this, but relative athletic score, Ballard falls in love with it. Emanwari is a 10. So do not be surprised if that's the pick. And again, safety, I would not be sad about it, but just bring us Campbell.
So just looking at Emanwari's stats then, because that's now a player I'm going to fall in love with because you mentioned him. So he played for South Carolina. For those who don't know, he played at South Carolina in the SEC for his college career, which is very respectable, very well-respected college. So 37 games, 166 tackles, 78 assisted tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 6 interceptions, 10 interceptions, and that includes 2, what they call pick sixes and 1 fumble recovery. They're very good stats. The impression I get from the college game is you can just be a better athlete than you can just be. You've developed earlier. You're a better athlete than the guy next to you. God, I've lost my train of thought there. Someone could pick up.
I know what you're saying, and just on that, actually, Nathan, I wrote a piece for Join the Huddle just before free agency opened, looking at draft prospects that the Colts could look at. When I did my offense piece, I wrote one player's name down. That was Tyler Warren, and that was it. I just wrote a whole piece on why the Colts need to get Tyler Warren. On defense, I went with 3 players, one of which was Nick Emanwari, the other was Jihad Campbell, and the third option was Jahdae Barron out of Texas.
Yeah.
Now, I wrote that, and then free agency opened, and we immediately went and got Javarius Ward and Cam Bynum. I thought, well, the chances of us taking a corner or a safety in the first round are probably lessened now. But I agree with Nick Emamori that potentially, if the players are off the board, a little trade back, because he'll probably be available between sort of 20 and 30. I wouldn't be against bringing him in. I think it's a really interesting name, and maybe one that's been the only reason that they're probably not being talked about is because of what the Colts did in free agency. Otherwise, I think you probably would see more names like that being linked with the Colts. It's only because Ballard actually addressed it, which surprised us all, that we're now looking at, at the names that we've been discussing sort of more frequently, your Tyler Orange, your Lovelands, and maybe more O-line players. But yeah, I think that's a great shout, mate. Great shout.
And I mean, I think now's a good place to wrap up. We've been going nearly an hour. I don't want to keep you all forever. But we are 1 week out from the draft, boys. So I'm just going to throw it at you, and I want you to bring the spiciest and hottest of takes you've got. I want to clip farm this. I want to bring this clipped up everywhere. I want us to be viral. Whoever wants to go first, you can decide between yourselves. I just want your absolutely stupendous hottest of takes for the 2025 NFL draft.
Yeah, I'll lead off because I've got one that I've been thinking about a few days. Could we see in round one more running backs go than quarterbacks?
Wow. Yeah.
Now that sounds mad when you think about it, but I've been thinking about this because I'm a loser, and my day job can be quite boring. But if you think about it objectively, you know for a fact one quarterback's going and one running back are definitely going in round one. Mm-hmm. After that, if I said to you no other quarterback went in round one, you'd probably be surprised but not shocked. And potentially, I've seen a few drafts where as many as 3 running backs go in round one, potentially. So my hot take is, could we see this year more running backs go in round one than quarterbacks? You can clip that up and make me look like a fool.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, I'm going to stick to this one. I asked you all to clip me last week when I said it. Ballard goes and gets Ash and G&T, trades way too much to get him as well. And the Colts literally, but not only the Colts, right? Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, they live and die by the sword of run the damn ball. We see Anthony throw 5 times a game, and we run this 65 times a game with Taylor and G&T. I'm all here for it. Run the rock, and we'll just run over the whole NFL. That's my hot take for you.
So we've got more running backs going than quarterbacks.
Yeah.
We've got the Colts not going for Warren and trading up for Chenty, which would be amazing. I'm going to go a little broader and a little funnier because I want it to happen. But I think the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely fumble the fucking bag. I think they get it completely wrong. I think they try and sidestep everyone and do a 4D chess move, and it just fucking backfires, and they finish 2-15 next year. Mainly because it would just be nice. Their 2 wins would come against us, of course.
I was going to say, yeah, you know that.
Somebody always messes up the draft, gentlemen, and it is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are going to completely mess it up. Yeah, so that's all I've got for tonight. Like we say, we probably won't be. We might not be live next week. We might go live depending on if we can be bothered, to be honest, because it's early hours of the morning just to watch Chris Ballard trade out of the first. But yeah, so we might be live. Ed, Nathan, have you got anything to add?
I have one thing to add.
Go on.
I think you might not be as mad as you think, dude. They fumbled 2022. They took Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. Let that sink in. Let that sink in for a second. But no, in all seriousness, thank you for sticking with us. Hope you all enjoy the draft and engage with us however you so desire. Laugh at our predictions and hopefully celebrate with us when Jihad's leading our linebacker room next season.
So I've been Harrison, joined by Ed and Nathan. We've been the AFC South. Like Nathan has just said, engage with our content because it makes it funner. Yeah. I think with all the content out in the world now and it all aimed at clicks and engagement, we just want to have fun. Like, we're a community, of course we are. We want to talk. We want to talk to other fans, not fans, AFC South fans. So comment, share this, throw it to your friends, clip us up, laugh at us when we're wrong, praise us like idols when we're right. Like a god, I want to be praised when I'm right that Jacksonville Jaguars mess it up. But then you can all laugh at me because the Colts have traded out the first round and picked up 9 offensive tackles in the 7th. Thank you all for watching. Join us after the Colts trade up to 5 and draft Ashton Jenny.